this video, you're going to see the hallway wrapped with dino film. And one of the reasons why it's being wrapped is before the renovation, I checked out the walls and there's a lot of damage there, mainly because it's the entrance, a lot of wear and tear there. So if it's prepped and plastered and painted, you really didn't think it was going to hold up well over time. It was going to have to be cleaned a lot, repainted probably every year, and just replastered even because it's just going to get dinged up. So I thought Dino was a great solution to this. So remove the railing, and by removing the railing, you can see a lot of the plaster is falling out. So this is a really old house, so it's going to have to be repaired, filled in, all that kind of good stuff. So you think, okay, this is going to take some time. Plaster's got to dry and prepped. Here, prepping the wall with a paint primer. Now, as it's drying, it's very important to measure everything. So in this case, it's going to be a little interesting. Some wood grains going on. You're going to have a double cut butt joint right there at the angle there. So it's going to match up from the bottom, and then the sides as well. So very important to measure properly and get a good game plan here. It's not like a straightforward wall or, let's say, a bathroom. So there's some unique shapes here. And you also really want to take advantage of the straight edges on top and bottom. These are long stretches here, and you'll see this in a second. So once the mapping is done, you're going to marry some panels together. Very important to do this because you want to make sure that you limit material costs. You don't want to cut huge sections here because these are long runs and that can really add up. So you want to make sure you plan accordingly. So once all the materials measured, you want to cut it out, and you want to use the grid on the back in this case to really cut it precisely. In this case, the two panels are being cut exactly in half, and one is going to go on one side of the wall and one is going to go on the other. So once everything's labeled, very important to label everything exact because you don't want to put on the wrong panel. Now that everything's prepped in terms of material, you want to prep the wall for the install. So now that the fillers are dry, here you can see there's knifeless tape at the bottom. This is a PPF line. You can also use precision line. So you can't use standard knifeless tape, and I'll come back to the knifeless tape in a second. Oftentimes you don't use knifeless tape on installs, but in this case it's really going to pay off. So now it's setting up the top piece here. This is at the top of the stairs. You have 4-inch cuts on either side. The top of the panel has been pre-cut, so there's no need to cut this because there's often with Dino installs, especially when you're doing walls, you tuck it into the corner of the wall or the ceiling. But in this case, it's just laying flush on the wall. So it's just always a good idea to cut this beforehand. Then you don't have to go back with your knife. So once the zipper's been cut out, the liner's going to be removed, and then it's just going to be placed right to the underside of the masking tape. Now on the wall, it's been prepped with primer 94, so it's ready to stick. Now tuck it into the bottom. Now normally you'd cut straight to the bottom of the top of the molding there, but this is even with a renovation, the molding wasn't 100% straight. So by using the PPF line right here, you can make your own straight line, and this helps from having to cut with the blade or even tuck it in. So once the knifeless tape has been removed, you got a perfectly straight line that doesn't have to deal with any kind of the uneven edges that were on the wall. So that's the reason why it was used there. Now we're ready for the long strip. Very important to prep this properly. So here, this is a 1-inch cut at one side of the panel. You got a zipper cut exactly in the middle, and that's all the prep to the liner you need. And this is for the triangle section on the one side. Now this piece at the bottom, or the side of the bottom, doesn't have knifeless tape. It's actually the straight edge of the panel. So there's going to be absolutely no cutting on the bottom section. And at the top side of this panel is a 1-inch cut on the liner, and that's going to be set up for a double cut butt joint. So here, once the panel is set up with masking tape, the zipper liner is taken out so you can create your permanent hinge. Always, once you take off that double check, because it's a funny position because it's at an angle, once that is created, the permanent hinge, you can squeegee top to bottom. Always a good idea in this section on the stairwell to always work down first. That helps anchor it. Then it's much easier to work towards the top, much safer to keep that panel going in the same direction. So at the bottom, there's no liner. You're literally just squeezing flat to the wall. Then it's going to come right above the bottom molding where the steps are. Once everything's applied, there's a liner right under this section here, 1 inch at the top, but now I'm cutting it flush to the side, 45. Same thing at the top. Don't want to wrap around that top section because there might be too much uneven tension on the material. So here, cutting it with a 90-degree angle, and then they're going to come back with a top piece at the end of the video and do a sanded edge. Now here, there's a liner underneath the masking tape there, 1 inch. Set it up with masking tape on top, 1 inch, to create a good overlap. Now this top piece goes down, zipper cut right there. Squeegee the material on, nice and even, small little piece. Always put your liner in a safe spot. Now squeegee down, so very easy, straightforward piece, even though it's on an awkward position on a stairwell. Standard overlap technique here where you pull the backing paper on one side, squeegee it together so it's a very tight fit. Always release that liner in stages. You don't want to do it in one full shot because it might stick too much and then you have to pick it back up, and if you do, that might be a problem. Because there's such low light, and this is done during the construction, not all the lights are put in, I run masking tape about halfway through the overlap. This allows me to really see the line that I need to cut, so it's a good tip to use masking tape as a guideline here. My blade's at a 30-degree angle, so I'm cutting through both layers here. Extra sharp knife, really want to cut through both layers, so I remove the top piece here, the piece of dyno that's on the underside here, that's not the liner, that's dyno. Then I remove the entire liner piece. Once that's removed, standard squeegee technique for butt joints. So squeegee side to side, 45-degree angles. Always use the side of your squeegee, very important to do that. The next step is to cut all the excess film. Now this is a side that's right flush when you get to the door, so there's no other dyno wrapping around this corner. 45-degree angle in there, but on this one, a 90-degree angle. So keep that parallel all the way across, then make sure it's 100% flat when you get to the other side, so make sure everything's cut out nice and clean. Once the triangle piece is done, you're going to come back with the longer horizontal piece that's going to match up to the piece that was initially put on, that square piece at the top of the stairs. Make a zipper cut right in the middle, top to bottom. Standard backing paper cutter right there. Very important to have a good backing paper cutter with a sharp blade. Masking tape is going to hold the panel on. And notice that masking tape at the top of the panel is doing two things. It's a guideline for where the material needs to go, and this is the straight edge of the panel as well. So there's PPF line at the bottom, and there's straight edge of the panel there. So there's no cutting where the masking tape is, that long line. But also that masking tape was put on at the beginning of the install for the primer 94. Don't want to get primer 94 on the paint, you just want it on the section where the dyno is going. So this makes it very precise. Now release the liner and squeegee down. Overlapping strokes, top to bottom. Same thing at the top. Curl it down so it doesn't fold and fight you on the way down. Gravity is a bit of your enemy on an angled stairway like this. Then pull the liner, long stretch here, match it up with the masking tape so it's nice and even. And this is going to overlap the first piece that went down. Then squeegee down nice and even. So the dyno is really bridging the molding at the bottom, but that's going to be cut away with knifeless tape right here. So this is PPF line. You can use, as I said earlier, precision line. But definitely don't use, let's say, design line or finish line here because it's not going to cut through the dyno. So definitely be very specific with your knifeless tape here. Now pull the excess material away, and this is a perfectly straight line that avoids any kind of weird plaster work at the bottom. Now here is an overlap technique here. You don't have to remove the liner here because that was removed during the install. And now with the 30-degree blade, you're going to cut through, pull the underside of dyno out. Now pull the 1-inch liner that was on that first piece that was from earlier. Now butt joint everything together. So the pattern comes together at a 45-degree angle, which is nice and symmetrical. Then apply the top piece here. This is going to be a sanded overlap. So this is a small little piece, so still the liner is at the top. Very important to keep that liner on even though it's a small piece because you don't want to pull the paint off. With all the dyno installed, it's now time to install the railing. Very important to do this correctly. You can drill holes directly through the dyno into the wall so you don't have to pre-drill these, which is super cool. But it's always nice to have an extra set of hands on deck so someone can be at the top and bottom because you don't want to scratch the install as the railing is going back on. And here's a shot of the final result as you come in the entrance and look up the hallway. There's wood on the right, nice and symmetrical, and wood on the left. So not only does dyno create a nice warm feeling when you enter the house, it's not just white paint, it creates an extra durability, and that's what I'm thinking about long term, is it looks good and holds up good, and that's what you want, and that's the beauty of dyno. Thanks for watching, Justin Pate.